Hey, y'all. Welcome back to the Culinary Mechanic Podcast. Man, there's still so much to say. Okay. Nevertheless, today I am so happy that I get to bring you this really cool conversation. My guest today's name is Ryan Brown. And just one of those chefs that's done a bunch of great things in different places all over the world and is now doing some consulting to really help restaurants and restaurateurs like up their game and just bring things to the next level. Um, his firm is called Union 38. And I really think you're just going to enjoy the energy that the guy brings to food and restaurants. So, without further ado, here we go. Welcome back to the Culinary Mechanic Podcast. Today I am joined by Ryan Brown of Union 38. So, Ryan, welcome.
Thanks, Simon.
It's Culinary Mechanic, so I'm just going to get to it and say, how'd you get into this industry? What brought you here?
So it all started in a Chinese takeaway in Ontario, Canada. A
Awesome.
friend of mine, we were in the eighth grade, and I'd always cooked at home. It was a hobby, something I loved to do. And his parents were opening a sort of a bricks and mortar restaurant. They were operating out of a truck. And so they were looking for someone to answer the phones, pack the orders. So it just kind of seemed like a way to stay out of trouble.
Nice.
And so jumped at the opportunity and kind of got sucked into the back of house life. And while I was packing orders, I'd be watching the chefs who were cooking over the walks, and there isn't much more excitement than watching all the BTUs coming out of those wok burners.
Yep.
And yeah, one day the chef on fried rice quit, and chef looked at me and said, "Do you think you could have a go?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I've been waiting for this moment for months." So yeah, hopped on, joined the line, and then started doing a bit of prep. So working with those dull Nella knives on boards, just hacking through bags of carrots and onions and
Yep.
day in and day out. So yeah, and it was love from first sight. So from there, it was diners and greasy spoons and steak houses, and I was definitely one of those kind of early young 17-year-old culinary pirates that with his checkered pants rolled up and a red bandana, and yeah, I thought I was hardcore.
I love it.
Yeah.
Um, I can't ever get out of my head, the vision of chefs as pirates. That's kind of that whole damn you, Anthony Bourdain. He stuck that vision in our head, but
Did you ever have the spoon? Did you ever have the folded spoon in your trousers to hang your tongs? Was that
yes,
ever was that ever put? Yeah,
yep,
yeah.
yep. I was also pretty fond of doing a twice around my waist plastic wrap belt that did
Okay.
something very similar. You just kind of learned how to like slide it on there, and that way you weren't damaging your belt, but it was there. But yeah, the spoon was I hadn't thought about that in a little while. I worked with a guy who uh he had he had a friend who was a butcher, and he actually had like the metal thing that he would put on his belt, and it had like four spots, and I was like, that's too much.
Yeah,
So
the
it's a
holster.
metal
That's like
clangy
the
thing
the
with knives
Batman
on,
the
like a
Batman utility belt.
like almost like gunslinger style though. Like he would, and it would kind of, he'd have a separate belt for it, and he kind of portly guy, so it's sort of slung off the side. But yeah, he thought he was pretty cool for a while.
The
I
boss.
think until
Yeah.
he slipped and fell on that thing and it impacted his thigh, he was like, "Oh no, I gotta get rid of that. That's dangerous." Yes. Um, awesome. So you get in, you find the pirate lifestyle, and I think for a lot of chefs and a lot of cooks, there's those moments in the world and life that kind of like start to draw your attention out of it, what keeps you in? Like what makes you say, I gotta keep doing this?
I'd say it's kind of neck and neck people. I mean, some of the best people, the best teams, the best moments, once you mesh with a brigade, um, it's there's really just nothing like it.
Yeah.
So, some of the best people that I know, I met working in kitchens or restaurants, and yeah, it's that camaraderie, I think, that really kind of keeps you in the game. And from what I know about people who work in other industries, it's not those kind of friendships and things that end at 5 p.m. And so yeah, just kind of being in the trenches together, and that camaraderie and that bond has always been something that kept me in kitchens. And then also the creative, right? The ability to be able to kind of learn and tell your story through food, and kind of travel anywhere you want to go, right? With what you cook
Anywhere.
and the story that you want to tell in a moment in time. And so there's really just no limit. And kind of the more you play and the more you dabble and the more you create, the more you just want to keep going. So I don't feel like all my stories are told yet, and everything that I want to kind of get my hands into has been done. So I'm still fired up more than
Nice.
ever to keep going.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think that's what it is, right? Like you gotta have something that you want to show yourself, sometimes show the world. I think that's what a lot of what for me chef work was is like, this is it's develops and it's like I remember like just digging into French food and like learning a ton about that, and then someone would go, "Here, have you seen this Spanish cookbook?" And it's like, "Oh my God, what's over here?" It's like that jarring representation of, "Oh, I gotta understand why they do it this way." But then taking that and going, "Huh, if I take a little bit of this and I take a little bit of that, we can do something like this." And people go, "Oh, wow, that's amazing." I'm like, "Yeah, it's not new, but it is amazing."
Yeah, so my favorite class in culinary school, shout out to Stratford Chef School in Ontario, Canada. Um, we had like an international class every week
Okay.
when you were in second year, and they had like they'd bring a dim sum chef down from Toronto, and you just spend the afternoon making different kinds of dim sum. I remember making like kibe and different Middle Eastern dishes with sort of like a mother and son that had a catering business. And so that was sort of my like, oh shit moment when we started doing all that, and it was a break from all of the stews and the braises, and a bit of spice, and just sort of wakes up young chefs. So for me, that was just, and still to this day, right? You go traveling, you go to Thailand, you go to Vietnam, you go to Poland. Like it's just incredible.
Yeah, there's just so many things that, yeah, it's never ends. Um, so my lineage is Mexican and Ukrainian. So I've learned to do all these different things that are very disparate, right? Uh, but just being able to understand, I think the thing for me that I love about food is it's like there's certain elements of food that are present everywhere, right? How many
Yeah.
cultures have like a green pureed sauce, or you know what I mean? How many like let's start to think about that. It's like, oh yeah, like how many cultures have a meatball of some sort, whether it's wrapped in dough or not, right? How many cultures have
A
like,
dumpling.
oh my God, dumplings. I've got this book from like 1971 on my shelf that is dumplings around the world. It has no pictures. So you gotta like read everything 7 times. But it's that like that just fires me up and makes me go, this is cool. Like I've been thinking recently I want to do a meatball book, right?
Yeah.
Just meatballs. And
The,
I'll even do vegetarian ones and like, just do all but just like balls. But it's gotta be called meatballs. I don't know if I can call it balls of the world. Um I don't know, maybe. Um Awesome. So Union 38, tell us about that. Like tell us how like I mean there can be some lead up, but or just kind of tell us how that happens. Like,
Yeah,
what are you doing?
I'll give you a bit of lead up. So I was most recently working with a Michelin-starred restaurant group and a food hall operator to relaunch some food hall sites post COVID. So there were some new sites, there was an existing site, and basically we created new content with amazing chefs all around the UK, and it was pretty full on. I kind of deviated out of the kitchen a little bit. I got into ops, so my title was director of back of house ops, and it was more about creating brands and designing kitchens and creating that whole back of house ecosystem. Getting really involved in tech, which is huge these days. And so within 2 years, we opened 40,000 square feet of operational space across two food halls and a CPU.
Oh, my head
So
hurts.
and 18 brands as well.
Oh,
Uh,
cool.
so everything was going along really well there, and my partner and I have been talking for a while about starting a family. So we ended up adopting a little boy who was a year and a half in March of last year,
Okay.
and I decided to be stay-at-home dad. So my last year has been spent, finger painting and getting our little guy comfortable in our family. So he's doing really well.
Nice.
But yeah, I mean, they always tell you that a lot changes when you become a parent, and I guess trying to figure out a way forward and something that works for family life, but then also an opportunity for me to be able to um work through ideas and help other people with everything that I've done in my career to run better businesses
Right.
similar to what you do. So yeah, decided to get the website up and running, and it's been amazing because you get to do everything that you always wish you had time to do, right? You get to learn about content creation, you get to play around with ChatGPT, you get to go to all of the networking events, and yeah, just all the things that you were always too busy to do. So I've never felt better about my place in hospitality,
Nice.
and I just feel like it's the perfect fit, and I'm really excited with everyone I've spoken to so far about different projects that have popped up, and ways that I think I can make a big impact.
Awesome. Hey, it's funny you talk about the all those things that you never got to do. There was a bunch of stuff that has come up for me around like content creation and like branding. That's the one that really gets me. Like just like the logo, the thing that you say every day, all the, you know what I mean? Like all those things. I had no idea that I would be into them. So for me, it's kind of really like, oh wow, that's cool. Like I like,
Yeah,
I liken it to the difference between scrolling through your social media and creating on social media, or and posting. It's like it's really different to go through the world and just see the amazing commercial on TV and think, what made them think of that? Right? Like how'd they get there to versus like, wait, they actually there's a pattern to that. There's a very distinct pattern to what they're doing, right? Like the color that they're using is evoking an emotion. The sound that they're doing is evoking something else for you. It's very it's a science all to its own that I never even thought about. So I totally get what you're saying. But I never knew that I was missing it. Just
yeah.
I think as a regular consumer, as it were.
I also always thought that had I never gone down the rabbit hole into kitchens, I probably would have pursued a career in marketing or advertising, or because yeah, the fascination with bringing products to market or advertising, or kind of luring people in by being clever, either with visuals or whatever it is. I think there's definitely an art there. And yeah, I've had tons of fun, just creating content. And it's fun to be able to like shout about yourself and do your own thing, and you're not always worried about being affiliated with a larger company. Like I was always super spooked on LinkedIn that whatever I ever said would always be
Yep.
drawn back to whoever I was working for. And I guess just kind of letting your guard down and giving fewer fucks and trying to just kind of like be yourself. So I feel like it's really the first time that I've really just been able to be myself and move forward with that. So yeah, it's been lots of fun.
I think it's awesome. Um, I you clearly have dipped your toes in a bunch of wells of restaurants and bars and concepts. Um, got any favorites? Got any things that like just make you go, man, I am so happy I did that.
Yeah, for sure. So I was a stagiaire at 22. The director of my chef school organized a stage for me in the south of France, and so he said, "Oh, you're going to Menton to this restaurant called the Mirazur."
Oh boy.
And I said, "Okay." I had to Google it to find out where it was. I had no idea. Never been to France, never been on a long haul flight like that before. And so yeah, I showed up there shortly after they won their first star, and I spent 6 months working with the team there, living and working there, and just soaking up the sun on the Côte d'Azur in the south of France. So for me, that was huge. I mean, just not that Canada doesn't have some great products to work with, but I was just in the garage as the goods were coming in, taking photos of like the cabbage and the cauliflower and everything that was coming in. Like I just never seen anything like that before. So that was pretty magic for me. That experience cooking at that level. And then I guess another one would also be France. I think I don't know what it is, but I think many of us chefs always dream about like running a French bistro, right?
Yeah.
It just seems like something on the list that you always have to do. So fortunately, when I was 26, I was head chef of a small French bistro in the sixth in Saint-Germain-des-Prés. And yeah, just it was all kind of regulars that would come in, and I got to cook, traditional French food, blackboard menu, but I kind of got to have fun with it. It was me and one other guy in the kitchen in the KP. And yeah, that was just kind of that like pinch me moment, right? Where you're outside smoking a cigarette, having an espresso before dinner service, and everyone's out and they're delivering baguettes to all the restaurants. And so yeah, I'd say those are probably the two that were just, you know, some of the better memories in my career.
Yeah. I never got the opportunity to do like classic French bistro, but I definitely was a part of some restaurants kind of that style, you know. My for me, like some of my favorite moments were definitely like the smallest restaurants. I worked in one place and there was a chef, myself as the sous chef, and two cooks and one dishwasher, and it was right there in Central California wine country. So there were winemakers coming in all the time, and there was wine getting poured for the chefs. Here, check this out. It's like, oh my God, wait, hold on. Let me get through this next 10 tables and then we can talk about that. But like it was just one of those experiences where I looked around and went, well, this is pretty cool. Right? Like
Yeah.
these are people that are actually coming here specifically because we do food that goes great with their wine. And we would every once in a while the chef would go out to a table and he'd come back and he'd say, "Here, smell this, taste this," and we do it, and he goes, now each of you give me one dish with what we have that will work, and let's feed them." And we just cooked like right then and there. It was amazing. That stuff usually happened on like, I don't know, Tuesday nights when there wasn't a whole lot going on, but it was it was one of those experiences where you got to flex a muscle that you didn't know you had. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, cook now. Oh, okay. And sometimes it was a disaster and sometimes it was amazing.
Well,
Um,
yeah, it's hard. It's hard as a young chef. You telling the story, I have that feeling of, there's a million things running through your head. You don't think any of them are right. You're overthinking it to the max. You're like, what do I do? And yeah, it's funny when you're a young chef and it's like, how do I create a dish? How do I? You just think it's the most complex thing in the world, and you're not going to get a hang of it. But it's, the longer you stick with it, and yeah, it just becomes your language one day, right? It clicks.
for sure.
And yeah, it's the journey is so much fun.
I think for me, the the biggest influence in my life at that time was a stoner buddy of mine who played music, and he we would get into these conversations about music and how so much of pop music is like four chords. It's all the same four chords. We've all seen the videos, right? Well, he would just look at me and go, "Yeah, but I'm pretty sure that John Lennon said it as good as anybody." And I was like, "What's that?" He goes, "There's just nothing new under the sun." And that has stuck with me since my early 20s. It's like, okay, it's all been done. All you need to do is understand what's out there and what there's a bunch of things that are, right? Like when you think about
Yeah,
classic pairings, all right, this guy's doing all sorts of weird stuff and cool, but like for me, there's just a bunch of things that have been proven. It's just like chemistry. And it's like,
yeah,
okay, and if you just read enough, you get enough of them in your head, you can take pieces of that and just go boom. And so I think that was a big change for me, is to understand that I'm not really creating anything, man.
no, but it's like
I'm
you're in the business of good times, right? It's giving people those vibes when they come and they spend time
yeah,
with you, and it's how they feel when they're there, how they feel when they leave. That's, that's the business that we're in. And I think, it'd be interesting to hear your take on this, but I think it's, for me, it's so welcoming that we're starting to deviate away from all of this really complicated cooking, and we're really just starting to get back to like some simple, good food. It's like, let's support some great producers, let's buy some awesome ingredients, and like, let's do fuck all to them,
yeah,
right? And I
yeah,
think it's the food that people want to eat. It's the food that people want to cook. And the kind of the theatrics that we were getting into, a decade or so ago, are starting to fall by the wayside. Which couldn't come at a better time, because it's difficult to fill a brigade these days, especially, to convince them to peel peas or make fluid gels and all the rest. But I think, embracing simplicity can help out so many operations now, and it doesn't have to be that complicated, right?
no.
And it's also for you and your team to like chill out and have fun. And it doesn't need to be all this stress of complication and a million items on the plate. And it needs to be fun for you guys too.
The restaurant business can be a grueling day-to-day endeavor. And with costs rising all the time, profit on the bottom line, it's getting scarce. It's getting hard to do. Culinary Mechanic is here for you, though. From systems, tools, and structure to coaching on leadership, delegation, and time management, or perhaps even just being an accountability partner to help you drive those results, drive a little more money to the bottom line. We can help you. Yeah, I think that, you know, I have a general rule about most like chef cookbooks, and I call it the 3 out of 5 rule. Whenever there's 5 or more components, I try to find 3 that will work, and I start there, man. Like
Yeah,
you don't need to, like, especially for home, but and I'll be talking to folks, and they'll be like, "Oh, what about this dish?" And they're home cooks, and they want to know, like, I'm like, if you just took 60% of that and just did it well, you'd be fine. Like, you're gonna, it's really simple. I was having a similar conversation with somebody yesterday, around, and I was on his podcast, and he looked through a lot of my social media stuff, and he goes, "You're really into that whole like open fire cooking, aren't you?" I'm like, "Hell yeah, man." Like, I can't get enough. Like, I just want to start a fire on my front lawn, and like maybe like hang a like figure out a tripod and put a kettle and like that's dreamy to me. I this time of year as we roll into spring, this is when I have a fire pit that is was actually meant to be like something you gathered around, and I kind of converted it a little bit. So I'll stick that sucker on the front lawn where there's nothing to burn really around it, and build a fire, and then I've got a sort of a universal grate that sits on top, and like I'll cook a chicken slow over wood and get some of it, and some of it ends up being burnt, but I just don't care, right? It's like so nice to have the fire lick the fat that's dripping, and like open fire for me is just great. Wrap the onions in foil and stick them in the fire.
Yeah.
Like you got sauce almost instantly when you're done. But yeah, I agree. I think getting back to simpler food is I never was able to embrace like a bunch of chemicals in my food. I was never able to embrace I still to this day can't like look down and go, I think I'll make 7 dots of something. Can I
Yeah.
just have
Or
that vegetable?
get the meat glue out.
No, no, no. Like there's like standard cuts for a reason, man. You know, I got a buddy who's a butcher, and he's like, I'm trying to get away from so many of he's like, I'm just trying to get away from like a T-bone steak. We don't need a bandsaw. How about if we just like take that New York off and like take the eye off, and he just wants to do everything to the muscle, right?
Yeah.
Really, really primal. Um, but man, that's hard to sell to Americans too. They're like, "Well, what's that?
What's
Why?"
this cut? Yeah, I don't recognize that.
No, but damn it, is it good? Like
Yeah.
just stop thinking and just try it. But yeah, simplicity, less is more for me has definitely become a thing. I'm glad to hear that there's somebody else out there saying the same thing, because I still know a lot of chefs and who, there's still 9 ingredients, 10 ingredients, and a spice rub and a thing and a thing. I'm like, holy cow, man, slow down.
Yeah. Yeah. It's wastage, it's labor, it's, real estate in your kitchen. Uh it's printing all those 9 menus. How you flicking through the shared drive trying to who updated which version of the menu. Chef did it, but someone didn't proof it, but all the wrong ones been given to the guest, and it's just like headache for all of this complication. And I think, people shouldn't be afraid to strip things back. I think people think that guests want to have tons of choice, and you feel a bit embarrassed if you only have 5 or 6 dishes, 5 or 6 mains on the menu. And it's like, no, just like do them well. And yeah, I think it's, it's as far as you need to go.
You mentioned like the headache of all of that. Um, I'd be interested to hear your take on this. So I'm a firm believer that like if we can reduce our actual stress levels just a little bit, right? Like the standard, the norm for decades, maybe even centuries in restaurants has been like ratchet it up and like apply pressure to people, and like the screaming chef is that thing that we all know. But like I don't know about you, but I cook better when I'm relaxed. Like food
Yeah.
tastes better when I'm relaxed. There's less chemicals in the back of coming out of my cortex, popping in my brain, right? Causing like acrid flavors that really truly like when you're like focused and sort of in that calm space, like cooking for me is a whole lot easier. So
Yeah.
I view simplicity as like, okay, let's unratchet certain things and make it so that the cook doesn't need to stress about the microgreens and the other nine or no, other 6 9 pans on their station of like all this fluffy little garnishy stuff, and like let's just cook great food that looks good and tastes good, and like be amazed at how great it tastes.
Yeah, I
But
think I think stress levels, our baseline has always been like two unfortunate things away from freaking out, losing your shit. And yeah, you're right. I think my favorite. So when I was an apprentice, I worked in a kitchen where you got to move around the kitchen. So the menu changed every week. and positions in the kitchen changed every month. And
Wow.
I always love squatting on the pastry and bakery section because to me there was nothing like coming in the morning when the kitchen was completely empty, putting my music on, letting the bread proof naturally on the table, firing, making fresh scones, and or making a cake, whatever it was. But that like zen, tranquil, I'm here alone kind of moment with the food was just, yeah, there's nothing like it.
Absolutely not. Um, I think that uh, teaching people or working with people, as you said earlier, to kind of help make their businesses better. Um, what are you finding are the biggest obstacles for people nowadays? And I think you kind of have to like take staffing off the table, sort of,
Okay, yeah,
right? Because
low.
we could talk for an hour alone about that.
Yeah, that's low hanging fruit. So I think a lot of the clients that I work with are at the stage where they've opened one or two spots and they're looking to open their third. And I guess it's about trying to trying to find those synergies between all of the sites and bringing in a bit more like so obviously you have site one and site two and everyone's kind of immersed in their own site. And then as soon as you have site three, you need to get that group mentality if it works, right? Some places have, in terms of level of offering, it's all over the map. But so it's about, looking at procurement, right? And trying to consolidate, trying to make sure that everyone's using the same butter, right? And then even if it's, mise en place, you have, you think of the movie split screen of like chefs in three different restaurants all doing the same task, right? So it's just and it seems so simple, but having a fresh set of eyes come in and spend time with each of the kitchens to go, hey, I saw so and so doing that too. Do you think there's a way that we might be able to have them make that for you and maybe you make something for them? Or, they're using a quality product that I think might really benefit you guys here. Should we see if we can get a deal on the supplier by putting that volume that we've got across three sites out to
Yeah,
tender? So it's helping independent restaurants think like a group and trying to find those efficiencies, that and it's not anyone's fault, right? Like everyone, chefs, front of house, everyone in the operation, like obviously there's lots of difficulties going on in hospitality right now, and everyone's in sort of panic mode, and it's head down and just trying to get through the end of the shift. So I'm really happy to be the one to come in and help and sort of be that fresh set of eyes to make it my full-time job to look at those things and have that bird's eye view. And I think consultants have an interesting name these days. And feels like a bit of a cliche. Oh, guy in his mid to late 30s has a kid, decides to be a consultant. Um, but I think if you um, where am I going with this? I don't necessarily try and come in to jam anything down anyone's throat,
right.
right? It's about coming in and feeling like you're part of the team and being shoulder to shoulder with them to try and help make everyone's life better for anyone working in the restaurant, for anyone dining at the restaurant. Um, so yeah, but it can be challenging sometimes as well, which I understand.
Sure. I feel like when I've been in those situations recently, the the first thing I do is stop, take a breath, and walk over to one of the cooks and go, "So what's the hardest part of your job right now? Like what is kicking your ass?" And like you ask four people that, and all of a sudden you start to go, "Okay, so how about if we work on like getting some recipes built for you guys?" That's been the one
Yeah.
that's just kicks my ass. It's like, what do you mean there's no recipes? Oh no, well chef wrote a recipe, but he never brings that out of the office. What? That's real, right? Like I saw that one. I can't let that one hurts my feelings. Like, come on, man. Like let's just even if they're index cards, like let's have a way to do something.
Yeah, right. And the feedback is that the food's not consistent, and we're like, oh, I know where we can start. Or, you walk into a kitchen the other day and see they've got a, like a Rationale Frima, right? And they've got their resting racks on it. I said, what do you guys use that for? They go, oh, sometimes we do staff meal in it, but it's pretty much and they've got no space in the kitchen. Everyone's working on top of each other. It's like, well, sell the thing, get you guys some space. Like, ice cream machine, Carpigiani ice cream machine for the two or three ice cream machines they make, because one chef came in and wanted to buy it, right? And it takes up this massive footprint. So yeah, sometimes it really does just help have that fresh set of eyes come in and make some suggestions to try and help you see things that you've probably never seen before.
Yeah. Well, if you think that it's cliche to be a consultant in your mid to late 30s, try being 50. Yeah, buddy. Um, Honestly, I've actually decided to make my life even more intensely interesting by I'm pretty much remote. So I work with chefs on kind of the what I describe sort of as the mental game, right? Like I'm doing a whole lot of leadership talk conversations and like, hey, so can we talk about your time management? Because you're working 75 hours a week and your people say you're grumpy. Like let's fix that, man. Like
Yeah.
I bet you if you have a partner, they're grumpy too. Like let's work on that. Um, so yeah, I've actually tried to push the word well the two words that are hard for me to say out in the universe are coach and consultant. So I'm working on being an advisor. And most of the time, people are like, "What do you do?" I'm like, I'm a remote advisor for restaurants," and they're like, "Oh, tell me about that." So that's a good in, but it's
Yeah, I like that.
it's different. Um, it requires me to know exactly what I'm going to say because if I say that I'm a consultant, they've already got a preconceived notion. Advisor makes me kind of like somebody from The Godfather kind of thing. Like I'm Richard
I'm a
Duvall, you know?
specialist. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's just it. Like I am a specialist. Um, I've thought about doing what you're doing, and I realize that I am too old for that now. I can't, I don't want to be in the restaurants anymore. I want to be able to affect people's brains. And I'm going to do it from right here, right? By having these conversations, by talking to culinary schools and whatnot. So, um,
Yeah, man. Well, I love
different
your
feel.
content. I love your content, and I think you do a great job at it.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. It's definitely been a while, like the last year plus of figuring out, and this sounds really funny to say, but like figuring out what my voice is, right? Like, who am I? Well, I'm the guy who has burnt out enough that I can teach you how not to be. I'm the guy who, like I said, before we got going here, I've had a couple of spots in my career where I thought, I need to get the fuck out of here. I need to stop doing this. And within 2 months of saying that, I usually double down and go harder. And for better or for worse, I'm pretty proud of the career that I put together. And now being able to talk to people all over the world. Talked to a dude from South Africa recently that was just great, just to realize that there's folks all over the world that are doing this, that are encountering the same things that you and I just talked about, and that's powerful. Um, I just had a former sous chef reach out to me and say, "Thank you for doing this podcast. Like, I don't feel as alone in the world anymore." And I thought,
Yeah.
"Oh, wow, okay, cool. And um, I'm not going to lie to you and go, oh, I have thousands or millions of listeners. Nah, I've got hundreds of listeners and whatever. Every week there's a few more, and that's all that matters, right? But
No, but if you can affect that one life, right? If you have that one listener that you can, prevent them from making mistakes on their journey, or yeah, just feel that connection that you're not alone, right? That
totally.
it's normal, and also hopefully some tips and tricks to help you navigate those tricky emotions.
For sure. Um, what I most want to do for advice for people lately is just say, if you have access to medical care and like insurance and all that stuff somehow magically in the restaurant business, use it. Because I didn't in my 20s, and man, am I paying for it? Right? Like I got knee issues, I got a hip issue that is just kicking my ass. Lower back things. It's like when you stand in the same place and make the same movement hundreds and thousands of times in a week, something's gonna wear out. Pay
Yeah.
attention to that, right? Do you got any advice for fresh culinarians out there?
Yeah, so I think find a mentor. We had a class in culinary school that was all about introducing you to big, big chefs, and learning about their career paths and what they did. So find a mentor, send them a DM, ask them for advice. I think, a lot of chefs are humble people that might want to help out where they can, be persistent. Um, Also have hobbies. Don't food can be your life, but don't make food your life. There's the let other things in. Play a sport, play a musical instrument, join a club or a group, but you need that mental escape from the culinary world, and it's not a badge of honor to have your nose in a cookbook every day on your day off and always be chatting about food with your buddies, and you need to diversify it a little bit because it becomes a lonely place after a while. So
Yeah.
those are my two
Uh,
bits of advice.
that's huge. I wish that somebody had said a little bit, couple of those things to me when I was younger. The hobby thing. It's like, yeah, you become a one trick pony when you're obsessed with that one thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure. Well, awesome. So union38.com, correct? Is how
that's
we
right.
find you. All right.
Yeah,
Once again, Ryan Brown, thank you for coming and playing in our sandbox. I really appreciate it. And to all you out there, please keep listening. Share this with your friends, and we'll see you next time.